On a night like any other, I found myself once again logging into YumeWiki, a game that I have spent countless hours on, roaming around the fantastical, ethereal dreamscapes within the mind of Urotsuki. Now, as Urotsuki, the protagonist of the game, the world is my oyster in terms of where I can go and what path I can go down. Perhaps I can explore the strangeness of Geometry World, or the darkness of Red Street Lamp World. On this night, however, I decided to jump into the Technicolor fever dream that is Marijuana Goddess World. Yeah, enough of that. With it as my starting point, I began my journey passing through a multitude of different worlds and landscapes, many of them getting increasingly more beautiful as I passed through them. This goes on until I landed in a world that left me with a feeling indescribable. I didn't know what I was experiencing other than the fact that it was accompanied by a chill, a cold, frigid air from the darkest of winter nights. I was taken back to memories of Christmas time when I would walk along the sidewalk admiring the strobing lights along each house. The flashes of blue and gray, the illuminating trees, the background music, drenching the atmosphere in a sleepy bliss. The view. I felt like I could have spent hours here. I was definitely awestruck, gagged even, but it was something more than that. Something that went beyond shock. Something that keeps me coming back to YumeWiki. And it wasn't until recently that I found the words to describe how I felt in this area. I was experiencing the sublime. According to the YumeWiki, YumeWiki is the fan-made collaborative sequel to the popular RPG Maker cult classic YumeNiki, created by Kikiyama in 2004. As in the original, you play as a hikikomori, someone who stays isolated and withdrawn from society, named Urotsuki, exploring vast, surrealist dream worlds in order to collect tools and costumes known as effects. YumeWiki offers no dialogue. There isn't a combat system or even a plot. Rather, exploration is the main objective of the game, as Urotsuki flows from room, bed, dreaming, waking up, and repeating the process, all while using some of her time awake to record her dreams in her online diary. To me, YumeWiki is one of the most fascinating games I've ever played in my life, and it is only now that I would describe YumeWiki as being exemplary of the sublime. But what even is that, and how does this game represent this random philosophical concept? Well, I'm here today to tell you all about it. Let's dive in deep into the sublimity of YumeWiki. In all honesty, the sublime is a pretty big topic. As an aesthetic quality mostly used to describe nature, many philosophers from all over Europe have commented upon it. But in this case, I wanted to highlight British Enlightenment philosopher Edmund Burke's analysis of the sublime, in his book A Philosophical Enquiry into the Origin of Our Ideas of the Sublime and Beautiful, published in 1757. In it, he defines the sublime as so: the strongest emotion which the mind is capable of feeling. When danger or pain press too nearly, they are incapable of giving any delight, and are simply terrible. But at certain distances, and with certain modifications, they may be and are delightful, as we every day experience. What Burke is describing here is this overwhelming emotion that treads the line of pain and pleasure, of torture and bliss. In more grounded terms, it's the addictive feeling of being in awe of a beautiful mountain, while also knowing that if you fell off that mountain, you would instantly die. Burke goes on to qualify the sublime even further, and determine the many reasons why this extraordinary feeling occurs, And through this, I find that the reason why YumeWiki elicits the sublime so well is because YumeWiki resonates with two specific causes of it, those being vastness and terror. Let's start with Burke's definition of vastness. Burke defines vastness as greatness of dimension. It is a powerful cause of the sublime. This is too evident and the observation too common to need any illustration. Pretty simple. Big things cause the sublime. But even though Burke says this needs no illustration, we have everyone's favorite founding father, Thomas Jefferson, to provide an example. Now, in his book, Notes on the State of Virginia, published in 1785, Jefferson describes the breathtaking beauty of Virginia. He highlights the Cascades in all of their grandness and glory, the towering natural bridges along with their calculated measurements, and also how he feels about those towering spectacles. He describes the natural bridge, the most sublime of nature's works. The fissure just at the bridge is by some add measurements 270 feet deep, and by others 205. It is about 45 feet wide at the bottom and 90 feet at the top. It is impossible for the emotions arising from the sublime to be felt beyond what they are here. So beautiful an arch, so elevated, so light and springing, as if it were up to heaven. The rapture of the spectator is really indescribable. Boom! Vastness causes the sublime. And through this, I find that YumeWiki is a game that is built on vastness. Similar to Jefferson's descriptions of Virginia, it too elicits moments of awe through grand structures. In fact, I often revisit many of these structures to witness them again and again and feel that sublime astonishment. The dreamscapes of YumeWiki are also generally expansive. Most of them go on continuously, no matter what direction you go in. Other times, they are headache-inducingly large and can't be navigated without an annotated map. YumeWiki is not just vast, it is gigantic. With over 100 developers that have collectively created more than 1,000 dreamscapes, I don't find it surprising that vastness and the sublime created from it is encoded in the lifeblood of YumeWiki. Again, let's start with Burke and what he has to say about terror. Burke states that no passion so effectually robs the mind of all of its power of acting and reasoning as fear. For fear, being an apprehension of pain or death, it operates in a manner that resembles actual pain. Whatever therefore is terrible, with regard to sight, is sublime too, whether this cause of terror be endued with greatness of dimension or not, for it is impossible to look on anything as trifling or contemptible that may be dangerous. Essentially, Burke establishes that fear is one of the mind's greatest tormentors. It seriously, painfully consumes the mind when truly felt and especially seen, and it is from there that the sublime comes forth. Jefferson actually reflects this quite well. He notes a violent headache when looking down from the vast heights of the natural bridge. But I think French philosopher Georges Bataille's experience with terror better suits my own. Now, Georges Bataille was a strange man. In fact, he was a weirdo, like many philosophers are. In his case, he was fascinated and obsessed with this picture of this Chinese man who was being brutally tortured and sliced up in an excruciating process called death of 1,000 cuts. Despite this horrific event, however, the man's face looked like he was in extreme ecstasy. I'll have what he's having. French historian Elisabeth Roudinesco describes this moment in detail in her biography of Jacques Lacan, titled Jacques Lacan, published in 1997. Roudinesco notes, It was indeed a terrifying sight, with his disheveled hair and an awesomely mild expression, despite his mutilated body. The man was strangely reminiscent of one of Bernini's virgins, radiantly transfigured by divine visitation. The sight of this photograph was a turning point in Bataille's life. What burst upon me was the fact that these two complete contrasts were identical: divine ecstasy and extreme horror. Even in the most terrifying situations, the sublime can be found. Granted, the man being tortured was high out of his mind on opium. Again, I'll have what he's having. But that didn't stop Bataille from feeling and seeing it. With this in mind, I think eliciting the sublime through terror is something that YumeWiki does extremely well. While the game does not display images of Chinese men getting mutilated, you never know if the next world you enter will be a beautiful landscape or a terrifying abyss of broken faces. I mean, who knows, maybe George Bataille would have loved YumeWiki. Maybe you'll come across the disembodied face in the dark museum, something I encountered my first day playing YumeWiki. Maybe you'll end up seeing the Colossus of Rhomb, or God forbid, you find yourself in Zalgo's lair. Ultimately, YumeWiki gives you the opportunity to tread the silver lining between calming scenery and exquisite horror. And it is at that satisfying silver lining where the sublime takes hold of you, and it leads you to a place indescribable, where the trees illuminate blue and gray, and there is a view like no other. YumeWiki is a game full of surprises. It is a game of vastness, but also a game of terror. And as those two things find themselves at a crossroads, the sublime appears and allows you to venture into unseen and dazzling worlds. To end, I'd actually like to take us into YumeNiki, the first game, as I do believe that my arguments also extend to that game as well. As Matatsuki, the main character of this game, I'd like to take us into her dreams, into her dream nexus, into the weird and wild graffiti world to grab her bike, and into the mall. Upon the mall rooftop, Matatsuki sits curled up. With a black cat by her side, she sits as a witness to the cloudy horizons ahead of her. At any moment, she could leave. She can disregard the view in front of her, or she could even succumb to the tempting cliff ever so close to her. And yet, many remain. No words can describe how much I love this. The music, the view, heck, even the cat. Everything. It's like I can almost feel the breeze. This tiny little loop makes me so emotional, and I don't even know why. I remember my first time encountering this area. I just stayed for an hour and listened to the music. I think the sublime can definitely be a complicated subject, but when it comes down to it, all these complex ideas only scratch the surface of how we truly feel. So I'm hoping that you'll sit here with me, like so many others have, among the gray clouds, among the silhouetted mountains, with this black cat, like so many others have.